Hi, this is BGA again, and welcome to the first video of my series. In this video I will be talking about one of my main passions, and that is fountain pens. I am in no way claiming to be an expert. I'm just a fan. The reasons why I use fountain pens: they write smoother than a rollerball or a ballpoint. I do a lot of note-taking with patients in classes, etc. And I find that my hand does not cramp up nearly as much when using a fountain pen as it does with a rollerball or a ballpoint, because you literally do not have to apply any pressure to get the pen to write. So it just glides smoothly over the paper, especially a good fountain pen. And when I say good, I don't mean expensive, and I will get into that. So rollerballs, ballpoints, one of the major reasons for their invention was to write on carbon paper. Carbon paper required pressure, which to make a carbon copy, and a fountain pen would not, unless you damaged the nib by pressing too hard or something. It would not transfer. So ballpoints were more of a convenience. They were, as far as I know, invented more as a convenience, not because they were necessarily better. They were just different. So a lot of people still use fountain pens. There's new fountain pens being made. There's a huge pre-owned market and antique market. So I'm going to try to make this video a overview for everyone from a first-time fountain pen user. You know, you're here for a variety of reasons, to the advanced fountain pen user, just to show some of the pens that I have in my everyday collection. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do here. I highly recommend, if you want to see some very good in-depth reviews on some of the pens that I'm going to show you, the user SBE Brown, Stephen Brown. He is a gentleman who lives in the Netherlands. I believe he's in social science as well, to some degree. I'm not exactly sure. I did have the pleasure of meeting him very briefly at the DC Pen Super Show this past year, but he was busy, I was busy, so we really couldn't chat too long. It was basically enough to greet, and he gave me his business card and a Fountain Pen Geeks pin. It's a forum network online. They talk about new pens that are coming out, restorations, a lot of great topics. I unfortunately don't have a lot of time spent on the forums, but when I do get the opportunity, I always have a great time on there. Okay, so let's dive right in. So you've decided that you want to try a fountain pen for a plethora of reasons. You either like the nostalgia aspect, the luxury good aspect, you know, sort of the shock value of, you know, people saying, oh, what's that? You know, I recently had someone call it a quill pen. They said to me, why are you using a quill pen? I said, it's not a quill, it's a fountain pen. I've had people call it a calligraphy pen, which at the time the pen that I was using was not something that I would consider, you know, a calligraphy pen. I consider calligraphy pens more of like a stub tip. I'll get into all of that later. But so let's say you're looking for your first fountain pen. This right here is my main fountain pen case. This is made by a company called Aston Leather, based out of New York. This case right here holds 24 pens. I purchased it from gouletpens.com. It's a great site. Brian Goulet, I believe his wife's name is Rachel. They're great people. It's a small company, but they have great products, and it's a pleasure dealing with them. So the spelling is Goulet. Not sure if you can see this, but the Goulet Pen Company. This is a card that they sent with one of my orders. Stephen Brown, who I mentioned earlier, sort of one of the internet gurus on fountain pens, has a lot of great videos. This is his card. He probably doesn't want me sharing his cell phone number and email, so I'll cover that up. But anyway, so Stephen Brown, Fountain Pen Geeks. Anyway, he gave me that at the DC Pen Super Show, as I mentioned earlier. So, all right. So you're interested in your first fountain pen. One thing you might be tempted to do is get this. This is called Parker 5th generation, the Ingenuity. Anyway, the only reason I bought it, I had a gift certificate that was given to me as a gift to a pen store that was going out of business. The funny part about it is the gift certificate was about 10 years old, but there was no expiration date. So they honored it, and their stock was very depleted as they were going out of business, and this was pretty much my best option. So this is what the quote-unquote nib looks like. All this is a fine felt-tipped marker disguised as a fountain pen. This is the actual refill. They're kind of expensive for what you get. It's like $8, $9. It dries up very quickly. I hardly wrote with this pen, and already the refill's completely dried up. And it does not give you the true fountain pen experience. Being new to fountain pens, you might want to get you might instinctually want to get your feet wet with a cheap pen, and I'll give you some examples right here. These are both Parkers. I'm not sure of the model numbers. Maybe some of you who are more knowledgeable than I am can help me out. I purchased these for about $10 at the DC Pen Super Show. You know, they're in great cosmetic shape. This one has a regular nib in stainless steel. It's a fine point. I tend to like fine point nibs. As you get into fountain pens, there's almost an endless combination of nib sizes, choices, widths, types of line variation. I'll get into that in later videos, or you can go on Stephen Brown's channel and he talks about all that. This pen has like a semi-hooded nib design, meaning the nib's slightly covered, so you only see the very tip of it. Both of these pens are cartridge or cartridge converter pens. What I mean by that, right now I have a cartridge converter in this. This is a Parker cartridge converter. I'm not sure if Parker uses a proprietary cartridge converter or if it's universal. You know, you'd have to research that, but because there are international cartridges, which are like it's basically like a standard cartridge that fits in. I would say about 80% of the 80 to 90% of the pens out there. Then a few manufacturers have their own specialty type cartridges, which are basically pre-filled ink cartridges, just like you would buy, you know, a refill for another type of pen, except that it's just the ink. It's a water-based ink. What a cartridge converter such as this allows you to do is use bottled ink, which is another great reason for getting into fountain pens. If you're, if you're someone who really cares about the environment, it's a lot less waste. You're not throwing out plastic refills and disposable pens. You can buy a bottle of ink and it'll last you quite some time. I do a lot of writing. And I prefer to actually write full-length books longhand and then type them afterwards. I know that might sound insane to some of you, but that's the best way that I get my thoughts out. So with the cartridge converter, if it's inserted into the section, which is this part right here, what you can do is dip the entire nib, make sure the nib is fully submerged into a bottle of ink, twist the cartridge counterclockwise. There's a little screw top here that will push a piston or a plunger, whatever you'd like to call it, downwards. Then when you reverse direction clockwise, it will pull up the plunger as a syringe works, and it will bring ink with it. I recommend filling cartridge converters that way. All you have to do after that is just take a rag. I don't recommend using paper towels because eventually you'll probably want a relatively expensive pen and they can scratch. So sort of a soft cloth that you designate as your ink cloth. So I have one that I believe is a type of microfiber, very soft. It's stained in all sorts of ink colors, but that's my ink cloth. That's what I use to, You can also, let's say you have a very expensive pen or an ink that is highly prone to staining your pen and you don't want that. What you can do is take the cartridge converter out, put it into the bottle, do the same exact thing, fill up the cartridge converter, keep it upright, place the nib and section back on it, screw on the barrel, and then what you'd have to do in that case, because there's no ink from here to here, is either hold it on a piece of paper for a few seconds and through capillary action it'll suck the ink, or give it a little shake and it will pull the ink down and you can start writing. The reason I do not recommend starting with an extremely cheap pen is you're not going to get the full fountain pen writing experience. I know this is a highly controversial topic, so I don't want to get too much into it, but I'm a fan of vinyl records, and I believe that on a great turntable you can get a better sound than you can with a CD. I prefer the sound of analog. It's personal preference, so please keep that in mind if you're writing any comments. I don't want this to be, CD's better, vinyl's better, who cares? It's whatever you like. So I like vinyl, but I like vinyl only on a good turntable. If you buy a cheap, let's say like a Crosby tabletop turntable with like a built-in speaker, for under $100 or around $100 or so, no, it's not going to be better than a CD. Same thing with a cheap with a very cheap fountain pen. You might get a rough, scratchy feel to it on the paper, and that's not going to give you a great start, a great experience with a fountain pen. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and spend hundreds or thousands. That means just stepping it up to something that I highly recommend for everyone, and it's just a fun pen to own, is a Lamy Safari. I think I paid under $30 for this on Amazon.com or something, or I might have purchased it from Goulet, I'm not sure. The Lamy Safari has this little tapered grip section here, which sort of teaches you optimum pen holding. You can use it unposted. I like larger pens. I like heavier pens, as you'll soon see. So if I'm using this pen, I always post it. There is a cartridge converter, like I showed you before, that will allow you to use bottled ink. It's the LZ24, I believe, is the model number for that, but you can check with Brian Goulet at Goulet Pens to verify that that's the right converter for it. What I do is, the pen, I believe, came with one cartridge full of blue ink. I used the cartridge up. I took a blunt tip needle and syringe. I flushed it out with water very well, with clean water. Dried it very well. Then used another needle to suck up ink and injected the ink into the cartridge, and it allows you to reuse these. So you're not producing waste, you're not throwing these out, they tend to hold more ink than a cartridge converter does. And I just enjoy the whole process of refilling the cartridges. A third type of ink holding, let's call it, is an eyedropper filled pen. You'll soon understand why, but the Lamy Safari, you cannot convert it to an eyedropper filled because it has holes on the barrel, which is designed as an ink level viewing window to see when you have to refill your ink. However, it is an open window, so if you were to put ink directly into the barrel without a cartridge, it would leak right out. Whereas a pen like this, which was actually a free pen that came with a bottle of Noodler's ink. I don't want to start a debate about whether Noodler's ink is good or bad. If you want to know my personal opinion, I'll put it this way: I don't use Noodler's in my expensive pens. I tend to use Noodler's ink in Noodler's pens. Most of the ink comes with a free pen. Don't be tempted to use that as your first fountain pen, because obviously a free pen is not going to be a great writing instrument. And that's what these are writing instruments. So you get what you pay for to a certain point, and then above and beyond that, what you're paying for is engraving, gold, platinum, diamonds. Price-wise, the sky's the limit. So, but how an eyedropper pen works is, I have this pen filled right now, so I can't really show you too well, but you unscrew the barrel, you take an eyedropper, which comes with the Noodler's ink, or if you're using another brand, just you can purchase an eyedropper at any local drugstore. You fill the barrel almost all the way to the top. I would say about, keep like a finger's full down, just so you don't have any leaks. Then you take the threads from the, let's live dangerously, as Stephen Brown would say. Okay. You take these threads on the section, you put a little silicone grease on them. There's also a rubber O-ring. Some people don't use both. Some people use both, like me. Some people do either or. And then you have an entire barrel full of ink that holds a lot of ink. This pen came free with a bottle of Noodler's. It was one of their blue inks. I'm not sure which one off the top of my head. This is another Noodler's pen that's relatively cheap that I converted to eyedropper. This is a Noodler's Ahab So you see the pen was originally completely clear, like the cat, and then I filled it with blue ink at one point, which stained the barrel. But I believe this holds like 6 milliliters of ink. If you use it in eyedropper mode, that's a lot of ink. If you get into fountain pens, at some point you may want to play around with the flex pen. I love flex pens, or at least springy pens. Noodlers, a good thing I will say about them, they've sort of cornered the market on new production flex nib pens. They're relatively inexpensive pens. They're not, I haven't found the most reliable. It's kind of like a niche item. You know, I've had some issues. The reason I converted this one to an eyedropper was because I had an issue with the, I'll show you another Noodler's pen. This is how it comes. It comes with sort of this plunger mechanism, which works kind of like the cartridge converter. That unscrews and you can convert it to eyedropper. That broke on me, so I just converted the other pen to an eyedropper and threw that piece away. So not the most reliable, not something to judge fountain pens by, which is why I do not recommend it as your first. Eventually, if you want to toy around, you want a relatively cheap pen that you can take apart. The nib and feed, to go over parts of the fountain pen real quick. This is the feed right here. This regulates the ink flow. You have your nib, which, like I said, you can get, the nib regulates the size of the line and the style of the line. You can have a broad downstroke, a thin side stroke, I'm sorry, a thin downstroke, thick, whatever you like, whatever your preference is. Either a professional nib meister or a factory pen manufacturer will have a nib for you. So noodlers, a lot of fun, but can be very frustrating for someone just getting into the hobby, because they're not always the most reliable. But you get what you pay for. Sometimes there's machining oils left on the pens that you have to clean, or else the ink doesn't, or else the pen doesn't write smoothly. If you're just getting into the hobby and you have a flex pen where the nib is designed to be somewhat flexible, but you push down too hard, you can actually bend it. The nib is comprised of 2 parts that are split down the middle to the breather hole, which this pen does not have a breather hole, but anyway, these 2 sides, as those tines open up, the line gets thicker and thicker. So you can actually break your pen if you're not used to writing with a fountain pen, and especially if you have a flex pen. And especially, flex pens were very popular pre-1940s with the Spencerian script style of writing, a very elegant script. I'd love to learn it. But that sort of fell out of favor. The nibs were very delicate. Some of the nibs were called wet noodle nibs, which were a nib that was so flexible. I mean, you could get everything from like an extremely thin line to a thick line out of the same pen. They're unbelievable. If you someday want one, Susan Worth is the person to see. She has a website, but she's at all of the pen shows, and she'll just sit down with you and you can try out any of her pens. At the DC Super Pen Show, I didn't purchase a pen from her that day, but the person who I went with to the pen show did, and actually spent pretty much the entire show day at her booth. She's a great lady, very knowledgeable, can fix a pen like that. and she has a lot of great antique flex pens. But save that for down the road after you are very comfortable with the lighter pressure of a fountain pen, your positioning, etc. You don't want to damage over 100-year-old pen because of something careless, and also a very expensive pen. So I showed you the Lamy Safari, which is my recommendation, which is pretty much the cheapest pen that I would recommend, that writes well, and the company has great quality control. They have a great warranty. I think it's pretty much like, if anything happens to it for any reason, they'll fix it, replace it, etc. Lamy is a great company. Stephen Brown's not a huge Lamy fan because of the styles. He does own some, but I love Lamy. I have the Safari, and then the next pen I'm going to show you, actually, before I get to that, one step up from the Lamy Safari, for about $50-some, is called a TWSBI 540, TWSBI. This is a piston filler, meaning you can only fill it by submerging the nib in a bottle of ink, turning the piston knob counterclockwise, and then clockwise, and the pen will suck up ink. These pens are meant to be user serviceable. They come with a wrench to take out the piston. It comes with silicone grease if you need to re-lubricate. Great company, inexpensive. I believe they're coming out, or have come out with, a replacement to the 540, so whatever that is, I would probably get that. Just not the VAC 700. There's mixed opinions about that. Sometimes you have to adjust. That's another one of their models that uses a vacuum filling mechanism. I'm not going to go too much into that now. I have a few antique Parker vacuumatics on their way to me now that have been completely restored, that are investment quality pens that are from the 1930s. A Parker vacuumatic, I forgot, just whatever their largest vacuumatic was, and then a Vac Duo. Anyway, so I will do a review on those once they come in, but I highly recommend the TWSBI 540. I've never had any leaks, any problems, one of the common myths about fountain pens is that they leak everywhere. I'll tell you, that is not a justifiable, that is not true. That is a myth. Even flying with airplanes, as I mentioned in my intro video on YouTube, I have my pilot's certificate, my private pilot certificate. So I've flown a variety of pressurized and unpressurized pens, and I use fountain pens. I use fountain pens in flight, obviously now not while in ascent or descent, but once I'm at cruising altitude. Basically, the reason behind that is if the nib is pointed down, there's changes in air pressure which can cause ink to leak out, which can cause the ink to push down. So your safest bet when flying is to carry it nib up. You can use the plane while in flight, just like I said, wait until you're at cruising altitude. And what else? It's just a great pen. When I got this, it was like $50. I was like, if I like it, great. If I don't, a friend of mine who's a mechanical engineer, he's also very much into fountain pens. He had one and just raved about it. So I got one, and I never regretted it since. So that's a step up. To show you a step up from that, we're going back to a Lamy product. This is the Lamy 2000. This is an iconic pen. It's in design museums, art museums. It's I believe it was part of the inspiration for the Bauhaus design movement. Stephen Brown actually convinced me to purchase this pen. This was one of the first fountain pens I bought when getting back into the hobby and purchasing new pens. When I saw his review, it looks at first glance like a black ballpoint pen. When it's in your hand, completely different story. It's this great macrolon. It's like a fiberglass almost finish. The fit and finish is flawless. This is a piston filler, so it uses bottled ink only, which I like. That's my favorite filling mechanism, is a piston filler. The pens hold a lot of ink that way. I like the whole process of dipping the nib, you know, filling the pen up, etc. This does have an ink window. You'll see this little clear window right here. There is an all stainless steel version of this pen that weighs a lot more, and it does not have the ink window. I will probably end up with one of those at some point. It's about 10 pens down on my current list. This pen has a hooded nib, meaning only part of the nib sticks up past the section, so it's kind of discreet if you want to use a fountain pen but don't want to bring a lot of attention to yourself. This is a great pen. Posted, you know, looks like a nice pen, but you know, unless you're really up close, you can't really tell even that it's a fountain pen. One of the main drawbacks that I have, as well as a lot of other pen connoisseurs, is that the pen has these two sort of dog ears. I don't know how well you can see it in the video, but these two little tabs that stick out just slightly that catch into the cap to hold the cap in place. Depending on how you hold the pen, those caps may irritate you. They may dig into your fingers. You can adjust your positioning, but I kind of like to find a pen that fits my positioning rather than having me having to adjust to the pen. So occasionally they will irritate me. I love the design of the pen and kind of the understated nature of it. For certain situations, it's great to have something understated but still a fountain pen, and it's a great pen for that. Then you get into, here I'll just show you a quick novelty pen. This is the parent company who makes this pen is called Krone. Then they have basically a subsidiary called Think, and this pen particularly is called the Think Hippie. It has a cannabis leaf for a clip. It doesn't feel like a very high quality pen. It was relatively expensive, a few $100 new. I pre-ordered it. It's a limited production, I believe. I just liked the whole cannabis leaf concept, the whole, you know, it came with like a psychedelic box. I'm not too big into keeping the pens in the boxes, so I would have to find it, but it's like a tie-dye box. I believe they carry these at Neiman Marcus. I ordered mine online on a pre-order, but I believe they carry them at some high-end retail stores. I'm not sure about that specific model, though. It was kind of like a very specialty item. Anyway, Montblanc, almost a household name for luxury goods. They make watches, they make pens, they make leather products, briefcases, etc. They even make razors, or have made razors. I don't know if they're still in production, but I believe there's a Montblanc straight edge razor out there. If you look at Stephen Brown's videos, he will quote I believe it's Peter Twidell is the author of this book called Fountain Pens, and he's the curator of a fountain pen museum, whose father worked for Montblanc, was trained in pen repair by Montblanc, owned a pen shop, and as Stephen Brown said in his video, and I quote him here, his father became disenchanted with the brand after their failure to acknowledge what he called a design flaw in the piston filling mechanism, which allows the pen to overfill. I think that's almost word for word what Stephen said in his Montblanc, I think it was his Montblanc 149 video. I've never had a Montblanc overfill. Of course, I try, I'm not saying I don't sometimes forget to, after I fill a pen, to drop a couple drops of ink back into the bottle, then flip the pen over, and then completely close it. That helps with preventing a pen from overfilling. I've never done that. I'm sorry, I have done that. I don't always do that. I forget, and I've never had a problem. So I love the look and the cachet, I guess you would say, of a Montblanc. This was my first Montblanc. This was a gift from my parents. It's from the 80s. This is a Montblanc Classique. I use this in school. It's a very small pen. I used this before I really got into the hobby, didn't know about thicker options, etc. I knew it was a Montblanc. I was impressed. Oh, I have a Montblanc. It's a great writing pen, just a little bit too small to be comfortable for me. So I'm going to leave that out because I want to do a size comparison for you. The next size up from that is the Montblanc 146. I actually have two of them. I love this pen so much. The first pen I purchased, which I believe is this one. No, it's the other one. The first 146 I purchased. This is about a $400 pen pre-owned. I buy my Montblanc pens pre-owned. It has a 14-karat gold nib. It's a beautiful pen. It has a striated ink window. You might not be able to see it because the pen does have some ink in it, but it's a great writer. It has a little bit of spring. I wouldn't call it a true flex pen, but you can get some nice line variation, which is something really, it sets the fountain pen apart from a ballpoint or a roller ball. If you write with a pen like this that has a little bit of spring and do it properly, which doesn't take that much practice, people will notice something different about your handwriting and they'll really compliment it. This is a pen, another 146, that I purchased for half the price of the other one. This was $200 including shipping, I believe. It has a 14-karat gold nib, but it's kind of older. I believe this was made sometime in the 80s. I can't exactly date this pen. It doesn't have West Germany on the cap. All it says is Germany on the cap, and it has the striated barrel. So it's been hard to date because the original ones did not have the striated clear ink window, so maybe it's been sent back to Montblanc for repair and they put a newer barrel on it. I'm not sure, but I love the pen. And this pen, it was sold to me as a fine point, but it kind of has a little bit of a fine italic to it, which really really is nice. So it's not the prettiest looking nib. I mean, I kind of like an older patina, especially since I have two. It's kind of nice to have one that looks newer and then one that looks like an more of an antique. So that's this. Now I'm going to show you the big boy of the Montblanc Meisterstroke range. This is the largest pen that Montblanc makes. This is a big pen. This is, just check out the size of that nib and compare that to, for example, the size of the nib on the Classique. It's a huge nib. It's a huge pen. I did use it as a daily writer when I first bought it for about a week, and it brought too much attention for me. I mean, you know, I got a lot of compliments on it, but it's not the most comfortable pen to write with for a long period of time unless you have very large hands, very thick section, which is this part right here, and that is where you actually grip the pen, is very thick. I'm not saying it's unpleasant, it's just not ideal. It was designed as a signature pen. This was a lot of very important worldwide documents have been signed by Montblanc 149. It's been called the Montblanc Diplomat. Oh, and I forgot to mention the pen that I showed you. The two pens that I showed you before were the 146 is now called the Legrand. So if you search for a pre-owned one or something, either search for 146 or Legrand. Anyway, girth-wise, I'll hold up all three so you can see. There's a significant girth difference. So I love the Montblanc 146. All the 149 and the 146 are both piston fillers, as I've explained in this video before. It uses bottled ink. The Classique, which you can only purchase pre-owned now, unless Montblanc does make special editions that are very costly, that are this size. I don't like the size. I think it's more of a ladies' pen. Not being sexist, just the size of the pen, seems to be something that more women prefer than men. And it uses either a cartridge or a cartridge converter. So basically, you can unscrew the section and nib like that. And I have some cartridges here. It uses a standard international cartridge, so you don't have to buy Montblanc cartridges. You can get any ink brand or color that you want. And you just take, this cartridge is filled with ink. You pop it in there, it will break a seal, and then you'll be able to write. When you're done, you can either refill it or toss it. This pen also accepts a cartridge converter, which I have one somewhere for it, probably in the case, but I very rarely use the Classique. I just can't bear to part with it because, as I said, it was a gift from my parents and technically my first fountain pen. So I've shown you the Noodler's Flex pens, which I wouldn't recommend starting out with. It's a fun concept. Self-repair, self-maintenance. The Montblancs, you almost cannot take them apart yourself. I say almost because they're is a gentleman on YouTube who is now selling a specialized tool that will allow you to take off the nib and remove the nib end feed, and also remove the pistons. You can lubricate it, do maintenance, etc. Yourself. But from what I've heard, those tools are kind of pricey, and it's kind of like hit or miss if they work with your specific gear, etc. And so many pens have been sent back to Montblanc for repair that it'll have a nib from the 70s, a body from the 80s, a cap from the 90s, etc. So just send the pen to Montblanc if it will be fixed properly, and you won't need maintenance for a long, long time. So, alright, now we're going to get into some fairly expensive pens. This is a Delta Dolce Vita mid-size. It has a beautiful, looks more yellow in the video, but it's actually orange. Has some great detail around the cap band. Has this little wheel here on the clip so that it slides into your shirt pocket easier, or into a case, etc. There's an ink window that's relatively large. It posts amazingly well. When you post it, I mean, that's a statement right there. It's a big pen. You can use it unposted. It's got a relatively thick section. It's slightly smaller than the 149, but not by much. Great looking nib. Like I said, actually, this might be a medium. If I get a really good deal on a pen, I will get a medium, but if I have my preference, it's for a fine tip, as I tend to write kind of small. But I prefer a fine tip with a little bit of spring, and really, I love flex pens, but that's a whole other story. Okay, so I showed you that. I showed you the Montblancs. Size-wise, if you want to see the comparison between the Delta and the Montblanc 149, actually, remarkably, the Delta is a little bit shorter, but girth-wise, capped, they're about the same. This is a piston. The Delta Dolce Vita mid-size that I purchased has a piston filling mechanism, which I've explained to you before. You unscrew this blind cap and actually remove it, and then you have another screw here that you turn to move the plunger up and down, and it will actually give you an audible click when it's at the extremes of position, which is kind of nice. When I bought my 149, it was an older 149, and when I unscrewed the blind cap, it sort of snapped off. The piston came with it. I sent it to Montblanc for repair, and basically got a new pen back in return for about $75, which for a pen that new is what, $800-900, if not more. That was not a bad deal whatsoever. So that's sort of my main case. Like I mentioned earlier, I tend to switch out a carry pen almost every day. And this is an Aurora. I forgot the model number. It's a Italian manufacturer. It's in a Ferrari red color, which I really like, especially it being Italian. 14 karat white gold nib. this pen, I do have a cartridge converter for it. However, right now what I did was I just filled, as you see, it takes a very large cartridge. I refilled the cartridge that came with the pen, and holds a tremendous amount of ink. The one drawback about refilling cartridges and also eyedropper pens is that if you're flying, you cannot adjust, you cannot remove the air, which really, if you take the necessary precautions, is not a problem, but it's sort of a myth that's been spread throughout the ages that if you fly with a fountain pen, it'll leak all over, huge mess, yada yada yada. No. If the nibs kept up, I've never had a problem. I write with the pens in flight. As I stated before, I'm a pilot. I'm not saying I'm going to write with the pen while I'm ascending or descending and there's massive pressure changes, but at cruising altitude I will use the pen. Okay, now I want to talk to you a little bit about pen cases. If you get well, pretty much anything you get from a Lamy Safari on, I really think you should get in the habit of keeping it in a case. It's really nice. If you put the pen in your pocket with keys, it'll scratch up the barrel, etc. You know, you can get these cases. I think this one right here it's a single pen case. I got it on eBay for like $7 including shipping. It's a nice leather case with a soft interior. Fits most of my large pens. I believe I have trouble with the 149 in this particular case, but everything else it fits just fine. For any beginner pen that you're going to get is most likely going to fit in a very simple case like this. Stepping up from that, this is a case by Delta. Their leather line is Macchiato. I don't know if it's a separate company, but licensed by Delta, but nevertheless the companies are related. And this is a single pen case that will hold a large pen. This will hold the Delta Dolce Vita oversize quite easily, as you just saw. You can get it in this orange, which I liked because of the orange, because it matches the orange on my Dolce Vita, which, in case you don't speak Italian, means sweet life. And then here's the 149, the largest of the Montblancs. That will also easily fit into the case. I fell in love with the color of this case, so I ended up buying the 3-pen case as well. This is part of my everyday carry. It goes into my bag, and inside of here, if you want to see what I carry, I carry my fountain pen for that day separately, but this stays in my bag. In here I have a preppy refillable highlighter. This is from Noodlers. So see, I do like Noodlers for certain purposes. This is a refillable highlighter. I do a lot of highlighting. It's an eyedropper filler style. It has a traditional highlighter style tip. It's really neat to look at it under. It includes a UV black light that's kind of fun, especially for kids. Noodlers also makes like a ghost, completely invisible ink that with a special light shows up, and I've heard stories about a kid who sends his grandmother letters with it, and she has the light. She has one of the lights, and he has one, and so it's kind of fun. She can read letters from him that way. This is a Lamy 2000, same style as the Lamy 2000 fountain pen I showed you earlier, but this is in a .7 mechanical pencil. I use that mostly for psychodiagnostic testing when I need to use a pencil. I also, believe it or not, do have a ballpoint that I carry every day, simply because it is a tricolor. This has blue, red, and green in it. So if I need to make different marks on a document for some reason, I have that capability. So now that, well, okay, I want to do one more thing. This is kind of a special treat here. This is a really, I'm going to do a very fast unboxing because I don't want this video to be terribly long. This is a Pelikan M1000, the largest Pelikan pen that's made. Actually, the largest the largest, I don't want to say mass-produced, but the largest production nib on the market. It's a beautiful classic green and black striated design with a semi-translucent barrel. I've never used this pen, never inked it up, kind of bought it as a novelty item. I mean, the nibs just, for my purposes, it's fun. I've used someone else's, enjoyed it. It's fun. It has a little bit of spring, so you can get some nice line variation. But and it definitely commands a presence. I mean, look at the size of that nib, just to compare it to the Montblanc Classique. There you go. It would even appear larger if I showed you, like, on the Lamy 2000, a hooded nib, but its competitor is the Montblanc 149. So Stephen Brown does have a great video with the comparison of the two pens. But just to real quick show you the nibs side by side, here you go. So the Pelikan is a slightly larger nib and slightly longer when posted. It's a big pen. It does have a thinner section. It sort of tapers inward, so it's it's a little bit more reasonable to hold for long periods of writing. But it's still it's like, someone compared the 149 and the M1000 to owning a Ferrari. They're great, but you don't want to use it every day. One second, let me just put this back. There are different styles, different sizes of this line of Pelikan. Oh, I want to show you one more thing. The clip on the Pelikan is shaped like the beak of a pelican. This is also the new designed Pelikan cap that just has come out about a couple of months ago, I believe. Before that, it was a black and gold. Now it's just gold. And this pen has an 18-karat gold nib. This is not a cheap pen, as you can imagine, but it is a beautiful pen for a collection. They do make a slightly more reasonably sized pen called for everyday use, called the M800, which is probably going to be my next pen, because it is available in a blue and black striated model, and my favorite color is blue. So, and I love the Montblanc Sovereign, the Montblanc, the Pelikan Sovereign line. So that will probably be my next pen. There are a few videos that do a complete unboxing. I'm not too into that. I really don't care about the box. Underneath of this sort of layer is it's like a secret compartment. It has a warranty booklet, a catalog of all of their all of Pelikan or Pelikan, depending on where you're from. It has a catalog of all their pens, all the different sizes, all the different colors. It has a warranty booklet, etc. So, not really, to me, exciting stuff, but I believe that there are people on YouTube. Just type in Pelikan M1000, and I'm sure someone has a full-out unboxing video. The last thing, okay, no, I lied. There are two more things that I would like to show you. A fountain pen is only as good as the paper that you write with. If you use a fountain pen with most inks, I'm not talking about a specialty ink like the Noodler's X Feather, which is specifically designed to prevent this, but I might be wrong, but I can't imagine it being any good for the inside of my pen. So, like I said before, I only use Noodler's ink in Noodler's pens. But what will happen if you use a fountain pen on like cheap copy paper at the office or something, it will bleed out a little bit, which they call feathering. So basically, if you have a fine nib, it looks more like I would say a bold, if you use really cheap, really harsh copy paper. It's also not going to be as smooth. So you really, as much as possible, it's fine to use. Don't get scared off, of fountain pens because you say, well, I'm in an office where I can't control what kind of paper I use, yada yada yada. Don't get scared off. If worse comes to worse, get a Noodler's pen and use X Feather ink for that purpose, and then maybe have something nice, for signatures, etc. Paper I recommend. I do like to journal. So this was actually a gift to me, engraved with VGA. I have an obsession with my monogram, as you can probably tell by my username and logo. So this is my everyday journal, to write down pretty much non-professionally related things, more, personal relationships, etc., feelings, emotions, all that jazz, is in here. Then I have a moleskin notebook, which is, this journal is from a company called Leatherology, and their website, I believe, is just leatherology.com. And that was a gift. I also got a matching wallet. This is just the insert from the wallet. It came with a very large wallet, but it holds credit cards. It has three credit card compartments. Each compartment can hold about 4 credit cards, or credit card sized items. Plus it has a clear window for a driver's license, ID, etc. The moleskin notebook I love. Great value for your money. I can't say anything bad about it. I use this mostly for writing down to-do lists, grocery lists, etc. I find that if I handwrite it, I do it. If I put it in my iPhone or something, I it tends to get lost in the shuffle of events. If you use a Padfolio, this is an older Coach Padfolio. I do have a newer one that my girlfriend just purchased for me for my birthday that has my DGA monogram on it. That one actually has confidential patient information in it, so I can't show you that one, but this is a Rhodia legal pad worth every cent. I'm not going to take the pad out, but it does have like a complete cover, and they're not terribly expensive, like maybe like $8, $9, $10 a piece at the most. You know, if you buy a few of them at a time, you save one shipping, and I tend to buy like 5 or 6 at a time. So I love Rhodia paper. With the right fountain pen, you barely even feel like you are writing. I mean, with that, the one Montblanc 146 I showed you, actually the cheaper one, with the nib that isn't the most aesthetically new looking. It looks more like, you know, a nib with a lot of patina. I could probably shine it up or something, but I really like how it looks. Anyway, that nib with Rhodia paper is smooth as glass, and I really like that. Last thing that I kind of want to cover in this video is a brief discussion about wax seals. If you go on Stephen Brown's SB Brown, on his videos, he shows you how to actually melt the wax and do the stamping. So, and I'm kind of against duplicating information on YouTube that's already out there. If you have specific questions, feel free to ask me. But this is a standard print A, and this is the stamp. So basically how it works, you take your envelope, you have a wax stick. I recommend supple wax in today's mailing system. When you purchase the wax, it'll say supple wax, J. Herbin, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, J period space Herbin. They make some great supple wax, all different colors. You can get gold flakes. It looks like a stamp pad to put your pen on, and then you can have like two-tone gold or silver flakes. And the supple wax bends, so in the modern mailing system, which is not the smoothest, not the nicest system to wax to letters, especially wax sealed letters, a stick of wax like this, which is brittle wax, will crack and the entire seal will fall off your envelope. Not something you want. So I recommend getting supple wax. It'll either say supple wax in the description, or you know, or something of the sort. Soft wax, etc. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my collection. I do have some higher end pens that are locked away in the vault that I do have to call my insurance company before I take them out. So I can't show you those today, but some solid gold, platinum, extremely rare fountain pens, but I don't write with them, and if you're just getting into the hobby, chances are you won't want or won't be purchasing one of those for quite some time, so maybe at a later date. And I'd like to, maybe if you want me to do a calligraphy video, I'm a beginner, so don't, you know, expect perfection or magic, but I've been complimented by a lot of people on my handwriting as of recently. My handwriting used to be terrible. That's one of the reasons I got into pens, because I thought if I got into a hobby, I would want to improve, and my handwriting has gotten a lot better. And I have had girls, just be like, oh my God, your handwriting is amazing. Professors, clients, and it's not necessarily the pen, but it's like wearing. I relate it to wearing a good suit to an interview. The client or the employer might not know how much that suit cost, but if it makes you feel more self-confident, that's what matters. And some of these pens just make you feel more self-confident. I showed you pens that will write well, that will do everything that almost that a more expensive pen will do. For example, the TWSBI Diamond 540, I can't rave about it enough. That was my daily use pen for a long time. You can get it in a few different colors: blue, I think there's an all clear, I think there's an amber. They're all translucent, but they have like a tint, and they're all piston fillers. I think that they have a replacement for the 540 now, so I would start there, look up reviews, find out what the replacement is for the TWSBI Diamond 540. It's probably called like the 640 or something, but don't quote me on that. The VAC 700 is another one of TWSBI's pens. Remember, TWSBI. I've heard mixed feelings about that. Apparently, while you're writing, you sometimes have to adjust the vacuum filling pump, and I don't really like that hassle. So not something for me. And like I said, I just did buy 2 completely restored Parker Vacuumatic pens that should be in any day now, and I will be happy to do a review on those. Those are some pre-1940s pens, beautiful pens, mint condition, restored to perfection. Anyway, so I'll show you how you can get into more of the investment / antique side of the market. So any questions, comments, concerns, things you think I could have done better, please feel free to comment below or send me a message. I'm very open to constructive criticism, and I thank you for watching, and cheers.